The story of the Washington quarter dollar in 1984 is part of a long journey that began many decades earlier when the United States sought to honor its first president, George Washington, with a coin that would symbolize leadership, national unity, and American history. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932, marking the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and it became one of the most iconic and longest-running coin series in the nation. The 1984 Washington quarter stands as a chapter within that legacy, representing the mintage techniques, artistic decisions, and economic conditions of the early 1980s, a period when America was recovering from inflation, technological changes, and evolving minting standards. To understand the 1984 quarter, you must first look at the foundation of its design. The portrait of George Washington on the obverse was created by sculptor John Flanagan, whose design was selected after a national competition. The image shows Washington facing left with a detailed yet classical style that reflects the artistic traditions of the early 20th century. Though the design originated in 1932, it continued largely unchanged through 1984, maintaining the same dignified portrait that Americans had seen for over 50 years. By the time 1984 arrived, the Washington quarter had survived wartime silver shortages, post-war economic expansion, and the transition from silver to clad composition. One of the most important changes in the history of the quarter happened in 1965, when silver was removed from the coin and replaced with a clad composition made of copper and nickel. This shift was driven by rising silver prices, which made it impossible for the U.S. Mint to continue producing silver circulating coins. By 1984, the copper-nickel clad composition had been used for nearly 2 decades. The 1984 Washington quarter was struck with an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a core of pure copper. This gave the coin a durability that made it ideal for heavy circulation, which is why many 1984 quarters today show significant wear. The year 1984 was also part of a period of technological improvement at the U.S. Mint. The presses were faster and more precise. Quality control methods were better, and minting facilities were producing billions of coins annually. The 1984 Washington quarter was struck at 2 main mints, Philadelphia and Denver. Philadelphia quarters carry no mint mark, while Denver quarters feature the D mint mark. Collectors often compare the strike quality between the 2 mints, noting that some Philadelphia coins may appear slightly weaker due to high production speed, while Denver coins are sometimes sharper, though this varies from batch to batch. In 1984, there was no special proof version minted in San Francisco because proofs had already become a tradition of that facility. Proof Washington quarters struck in 1984 featured deeply mirrored fields and frosted devices known as cameo contrast, making them highly desirable to collectors. The proof coins, however, were not released into circulation, but were packaged in annual sets for hobbyists. These proof sets are an important part of numismatic history because they reflect not only the craftsmanship of the U.S. Mint, but also the growing hobby of coin collecting during the late 20th century. The designs on the 1984 quarter remained the same as earlier years. The obverse featured George Washington, while the reverse displayed the American eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches below, representing both strength and peace. This reverse design had been used for decades and would continue until the introduction of the State Quarters program in 1999, which replaced the eagle with 50 unique reverse designs representing each state. Thus, the 1984 quarter belongs to the final era of the traditional eagle back. Collectors often study 1984. Washington quarters for interesting varieties, although 1984 is not known for major doubled die varieties or dramatic mint errors. Some examples do exist. There are off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, filled mint marks, and other small minting anomalies that attract collectors seeking unique pieces. In circulation, these errors may not be immediately noticeable, but they contribute to the broader story of 1980s minting practices and the imperfections that sometimes slipped through high-speed production. Economically, the early 1980s were a period of change for the United States. Inflation had reached high levels in the late 1970s, and the country moved into a period of tight monetary policies to stabilize the economy. Coins like the 1984 quarter played an essential role in everyday transactions because electronic payments were not yet widespread. The quarter was heavily used in vending machines, parking meters, laundromats, arcade games, payphones, and small purchases, making it one of the most frequently handled coins of the decade. As a result, millions of 1984 quarters circulated widely, and by the late 1980s, many already showed moderate wear. The Washington quarter also carried symbolic significance in 1984. Because the coin featured George Washington, it reminded Americans of the values associated with the first president leadership integrity and the foundation of the country's democratic system. Throughout the early 1980s, schools, businesses, and civic organizations used the image of Washington as a symbol of tradition and patriotism, and the quarter circulated as a daily reminder of national heritage. Even though it was a common coin, its imagery connected millions of people to American history. For collectors, the 1984 quarter has several levels of interest. Circulated examples are extremely common and hold face value, but uncirculated coins, especially those graded in high mint state by professional grading services, can command premium prices. A flawless MS-67 or MS-68 coin is considered scarce because even new coins from the 1980s often show small contact marks from the minting and bagging process. Proof coins with deep cameo contrast also hold collector value due to their visual beauty and limited production. The 1984 quarter also reflects the technological and cultural environment of its time. The early 1980s saw advances in computers, robotics, and manufacturing, and the mint was beginning to incorporate more automated systems. Though modern digital technology had not yet reached full maturity, the methods used to design and produce coins were gradually becoming more precise and more efficient. At the same time, the American public was becoming increasingly interested in collecting coins thanks to publications, price guides, and coin conventions that helped educate and connect hobbyists. The Washington quarter remained a stable and familiar presence in American pocket change throughout 1984 and beyond. Every coin minted that year contributed to the everyday rhythm of life, forming part of a financial system that supported commerce, transportation, entertainment, and communication. For many people, a 1984 quarter might have been the coin they used to make a phone call, buy a newspaper, play a video game, or pay a bus fare. These small transactions are part of the coin's living history. When examining the 1984 quarter from a numismatic perspective, one can appreciate the craftsmanship that went into its production. The rim denticles portrait and eagle all reflect the classical style of American coinage. The details might seem simple compared to modern commemorative coins, but they represent a period when the United States Mint focused on functionality, durability, and familiarity rather than constant design changes. The Washington quarter remained consistent by design with the goal of maintaining public trust in the nation's currency. The legacy of the 1984 Washington quarter becomes even clearer when viewed in the larger context of American numismatic history. It stands between two major eras, the long-running traditional design period and the modern era of circulating commemoratives introduced in 1999. This makes the 1980s Washington quarters part of the final generation of classic eagle-back designs before the explosion of new state and national park themes that transformed modern U.S. coinage. Even decades later, the 1984 quarter continues to circulate, though many have been lost, worn out, or collected. Some survive in mint sets or albums preserved by collectors who appreciate their connection to a specific moment in American history. Whether found in pocket change or stored in a collection, the coin represents stability, continuity, and the enduring influence of George Washington. In summary, the 1984 Washington quarter is more than just a coin. It is a piece of art, a product of advancing minting technology, a reflection of economic conditions, and a daily tool used by millions of Americans. Its history includes the evolution of its design, the transition to clad composition, the operations of the Philadelphia and Denver mints, the beauty of proof coins, and the cultural significance of Washington's portrait. Though common in circulation, each 1984 quarter carries a story shaped by the hands that used it and the history that produced it.